أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. We started this talk about saying that the source of the love that brings us to this tent, it's not our parents, it's not our society, it's not the household we were born in. They have a lot of things they love, but we don't embody all of those things. The source of this wudda, as per the ahadith, which were explaining the verses to us, is the iman of Aba Abdullah and the amal salih of Aba Abdullah. The source of this thing which brings us to the tent is nothing but Aba Abdullah himself. And imamat, well, it is the root of a religion. So the roots of a tree, if they're doing their job, they allow a tree to then have fruits. So we then analyzed and said we have to make sure we have a real tree, not a fake one. Fake trees don't give fruits. Real ones do. We said, what can make a tree hollow? What can eat away at a tree and make it hollow, such that it doesn't give fruits? Well, we started looking at termites. We said, termites can do that. And we analyzed waswas then. Waswas, we said, let's see how it affects man. It affected man in three ways. It affected him at the level of the actions, with najasa tahara, at the level of the relationships between man and his Rabb, between man and his eyes and ears, between man and the very time he's been given, his 24 hours. Okay. We also talked about the fact that these termites can affect the root belief system. We gave the analogy of the two landing strips. The heart of a believer has these two particular landing strips. This should be opening a lot of meaning for you now, this review. We continued then and we said, okay, we see that we have these two landing strips. Let's see how waswas, how these termites affect our root belief system. We said we have three beliefs in our root belief system. What are the three beliefs? We said we have the origin, Tawheed, the destination, Ma'ad, Qiyamah, and the in-between, this divine walaya. And the job of the divine wali was to lead us to the right destination, which is a return to the origin. We continued then. We said waswas, when it comes in, it separates our root beliefs, and after it separated them, it's easier to deform them. And when there's a deformity, when there is a deformation happening at the roots are deformed, they're not in their right shapes, they're not doing the right things, they're hollow inside, then, well, it results in an imbalance in the action. The right fruits that this tree was supposed to give, it doesn't give anymore. We went past that then. We said, okay, let's look at what an intrinsic and extrinsic discussion on imamat looks like. We said, knowing the right thing is not the same as doing the right thing. Okay? That was the take-home message in that particular lecture. Knowing what to do, knowing the right thing, is not the same as doing the right thing. We're not just trying to submit to Allah in our minds, we're trying to submit to Him in actuality in our 24 hours. So, as a person now goes to take away these termites from his relationships with Allah and others, his family, his body parts, his time, as he's taking these termites out, this tree is starting to come back to life and it gives fruit now. A person can now actually interact with the meanings that are present in the words left by these divine walis. Okay. Now reading the Quran and now reading the du'as is not done like reading the newspaper, God forbid, or worse. You went further. You said there's a unity between the Imam and the Sharia. I'll give you a funny example. He said it's like a gym teacher, he's chubby himself. He's telling you to exercise, he's telling you to work out, but in reality, he's not doing those very things that he's asking you to do. He's not the embodiment of the message he preaches. We saw what the Holy Quran calls the people who are not the embodiment of the message they preach. If there's a fake relationship, an arbitrary relationship between the preacher and the things being preached, this particular person was seen as a fasiq, a transgressor. And we said, wait a second, I know what causes transgression. These termites, their effects was exactly that. They pushed me to transgress. So if you don't want to have termites, then you have to put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. You have to embody the message. It has to be lived out within the 24 hours. Salawat, please. But today, we're on a little bit of a different journey. See, last session, we said what? We said there's a unity between the Imam and the Sharia, such that if you went to the Imam and you took the Sharia away from him, there would be nothing left. If you went to the Sharia and you took the Imam away from it, there'd be nothing left. There's unity between them. The Imam embodies the Sharia, and as the verses were describing, the Sharia is nothing but the ma'rifat of the Imam, but the understanding of the Imam. Okay? All right, let's take some practical lessons today. One very particular one. Can anyone claim that the Imam was not involved with politics? The Imam was apolitical? Can anybody claim that? Was his policy please everybody and anybody? Can anybody claim that? Of course not. But remember we said termites do what? Termites cause a person to transgress. And this transgression displays itself in the imbalance. This simple question, that was the Imam apolitical, should pull a person away from one extreme at least. Remember the example we said when somebody's about to jump off a roof and you're telling them, don't jump, go back, go back. They go so far back that they fall from the other side. This question pulls a person from one extreme. But there's two extremes to the equation. There's a hadith by Imam Ali. It says that you won't find a jahil except that he's at one extreme or the other extreme. لا يرى الجاهل إلا مفرطا إلا مفرطا إلا مفرطا أو مفرطا. The tashdid is too small in my notes. You won't see a jahil except that he is at one extreme or the other extreme. Who is this person who's at one extreme or the other extreme? He is a jahil. Okay. If you don't want to be at these extremes, what do you have to do? Well, you have to get rid of that trait which causes this. You have to get rid of jahl. So either you yourself are an alim or you are seeking advice and counsel from an alim. If you're not, then this saying of Imam Ali might apply to you. So when termites affected, what do? They deformed something. The portion which is deformed, well, that's jahl. That's not the correct thing. It's deformed. Its actual form was ilm, was the right thing. It was the balanced thing. So termites, when they come and they deform something, in fact, they are causing jahl. They're deforming, they're taking a person away from ilm, they're causing jahl. What happens when jahl happens? A person transgresses. He goes beyond the bound. What happens when you go beyond the bounds of a roof? You fall from one end or the other. لا يرى الجاهل إلا مفرطا أو مفرطا. Salawat, please. So we've given examples of imbalance so far in our talks too. We talked about the idea of Tawheed and Tawassul. We talked about the idea of the Azadari and Ibadah. We talked to the Sayyids. We talked to the community leaders, the message, the people who were trying to spread this particular message. We talked to all of those. Now it's time to see the imbalance in politics. On the one hand, we know for sure that being apolitical is definitely not the right thing to do. What about the other end? What is this other extreme that I have to consider? Question. Can anyone claim that the Imam made weak political appearances? Na'udhu billah? No. Was his display of a political stand when he took one weak in its appearance? Substanceless? No. Not a single person can claim that. Let me tell you a story from a time in history not many people talk about. See, after the death of Yazid, until the events of Karbala, there's a chunk of history. I mentioned one thing from that chunk. I mentioned a letter that Muawiyah sent to Abu Abdullah, saying that if you conspire against me, then I'll conspire against you. And Abu Abdullah responded to him, letting him know exactly what he thought about who Muawiyah was. He said, you did this bad deed and this bad action, you killed him and you killed this and so on and so forth. Well, that's a letter. What else did Abu Abdullah do in that time? There was according to some narrations, there's a caravan that was taking a lot of money to the treasury of Muawiyah. Once it's clear that Muawiyah has broken the peace treaty with Imam Hassan, he's appointed, or he's about to appoint now. He's getting the things ready for Yazid to come into power. Abu Abdullah comes and he takes control of this caravan. And he sends a letter to Muawiyah. It's very short. It says, I, Hussein ibn Ali, saw this money was coming to you and that you were going to use it to both make yourself stronger and your dynasty after you. I, Hussein ibn Ali, have more of a right over this money and I've taken it for myself. Sends the caravan empty-handed to Muawiyah, sending a strong message to him. If you break the peace treaty with Imam Hassan and you want to now start a dynasty, you want to now give the Khilafah to your son, Yazid, it's not going to happen on my watch. So the Imam is definitely not apolitical. But he doesn't make a weak stand either. Salawat, please. See, when I make a weak political stand, I'm causing the very downfall of the things I wish to erect in society. In an attempt to cause political motivation in a certain place, I carry myself with political flags. I demand the conversation to turn to me. And what happens? And when happens that which happens, I say things like, Imam Hussein was a revolutionary. Imam Hussein was someone who got involved politically. So ask this. What gave substance to his political appearance? What gave substance to the political appearance of Imam Hussein? On the one extreme, the apolitical extreme, we have someone who might be relying on the cops of an ethically bankrupt system just because someone has some questions to ask. But there's two extremes to this equation. So ask yourself, what truly gave substance to the political stances of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam? Was it that they spoke loudly? They dressed in a particular way? They had the masses with them? Is that what truly gave them the substance? They had a political flag. They wore a particular shafia. They wore a specific green hat. Did they go to the court of Yazid and say, There, I'm here to stand against you. No. See, we have to recognize where we are and the situation that we are in. We have to work with the reality of the situation we are in. Not only that, we have to work with our reality as well. Salawat, please. The stance you take in the court of Yazid, the stance you take in the court of Yazid is very different than the stance you take in the battlefield of Karbala. And we saw that. We see the difference between the noble brother and the courageous sister. We see the difference in the father covered in blood and the son covered in chains. When it was a place to fight the good fight, the hand of Allah struck the enemies of Allah. But when it was a time to ensure the survival of the Aitam Ali Muhammad, the Yateems of the Ali Muhammad, a much more different method was applied. Was it apolitical? No, of course not. The stance from the tent of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a balanced one, be it in Karbala or in the court of Yazid. The deen of Allah teaches us over and over what exactly gives substance to activism. The deen of Allah teaches us over and over what exactly gives substance to our political stances. What is it? What gave substance to the cause which brought us to this particular tent? The cause that gave us and granted us this wudda, what gave substance to that cause? The verse mentioned to us. It was the faith of Abu Abdullah and his A'mal Saleh. It was the unity between him and the Sharia. It was the fact that he embodied that which he preached. This is what gave substance to the cause. And what was the effect? For 1,400 years, we still gather. Until the day of Qiyamah, we will keep gathering. Embodying the cause you stand for is exactly what gives substance to your stand. And if you don't embody that, then your stand really is arbitrary. It's fake. It's not real. Salawat, please. They burned the Quran, na'uzubillah, a few days ago. The representatives of Shaitan, they sought to put down the Quran. So you, as the representative of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, bring it up in actuality. How do you bring it up? You are the king of one country. Bring it up at least in that. What's the country you have full control over? It's the country of your 24 hours. If the representative of shaitan brings down the book of Allah in his country, I will raise it in mine. I cannot let a day go by that I do not interact with this book. And in doing so, now when I take a stance, my stance has substance to it. The enemy of Allah is preventing people from coming to some centers. The enemy of Allah is preventing some people from coming to some centers. I respond, how? I ensure that I come physically present to my centers. Then standing up and taking a stance has substance behind it. Question. I have to make sure. I have to understand. I have to ask myself, is it the building that's giving me guidance or the scholar in it? So right away, I clarify, I understand that exactly why I'm coming to the center too. It's not to see my best friend. It's not to drink the most amazing chai. This was supposed to be a center of guidance. I'm coming here exactly for that. I don't want to let termites imbalance my approach to it. So now, when you embody the message, when you in your 24 hours are a representative of it, it exists in its actuality now for you. What happens now? You've given yourself substance. It's like you've done the wudu before calling the people for the prayers. You've done the wudu, you've purified yourself, and now you're giving the adhan. So now when people do arrive, the prayer can truly start. So this wood that we had was formed in our hearts and sourced in the Iman and the Amal Salih of Abdullah. Let's open this up a little bit. The Imam, his formless existence, his existence not bound by just two hands and 2 feet and 2 eyes, his formless existence, it's like the closest level of the rays to the sun. It's so close that there's no difference between him and the sun, except that he's the ray of the sun. He's dependent entirely on the independent, the sun. So when this Imam at that great level embodies the message that he's preaching, well, the effects are seen. Every speck of sunlight that reaches the earth goes through that first layer. It would not reach the earth unless it was connected to that first layer closest to the sun. The effects of this immense submission to Allah is seen in the effects afterwards. This was the formless state of Aba Abdullah, which caused the effect in its real form from the time of Nabi Adam all the way till Qiyamah. And we are blessed with this deep love. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have to say about those who don't embody their actions? Let's look this up a little bit more too. If I am taking a political stance, if I am trying to be active, but I don't really represent that which I'm being active towards, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have to say to those people? Let's take a look. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لما تقولون ما لا تفعلون. For this particular verse, we have a particular hadith from the Nabi. He says, this verse broke my back. What does that mean? The message in this verse is immense. What is this verse saying? Who's Allah addressing here, first of all? Is he addressing all of mankind? No. He's saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. All those of you who claim that you believe. What is he saying? He's asking a question. Lima taquluna ma la taf'alun. Why do you claim and say that which you do not do? He continues. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse saying that don't say anything, don't preach, don't spread the message? No. He's saying, why do you say that which you do not embody? This is not an invite to never preach. It is not an invite to take an apolitical stance. It's an invite to a different path altogether. It's an invitation to embody that which you preach. The verse continues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. كَبُرَ مَقْتًا. It's a big issue. It's a big negativity. It's grievously audacious near Allah. What's grievously audacious? What's this great transgression? أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. That you say, that you preach, that you claim that which you do not embody. Salawat, please. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His existence, is He an emotional existence? Na'udhu billah. Can we attribute emotions to Allah? like we do to mankind? No. So, what does it mean when we have in our verses statements where Allah is saying, this is a big thing that I don't like? It means this thing is existentially detrimental to you. What does this mean? It means that this thing is not gonna let you get to the point that you're supposed to be getting to. And exactly by how much is it not gonna let you get to where you're supposed to get to is described with the intensity of the negative emotion expressed in the words. So here Allah says, Kabura maqtan indallah. If you're preaching something that you don't practice, it's not just a small sin, it's not just a small vice. It takes you entirely away from where you're supposed to be going. We can take a different meaning too. What happens in the other side when you do embody that which you preach? If you're telling your kids and you're hoping and you're aspiring that your kids are someone who are pious or religious, and you, before asking them for that, embody it yourself, if you're hoping your daughters don't fall into certain sins, and you yourself start to prevent yourself from falling into sins, what happens now when you're in this great position? Well, then it's greatly loved by Allah. It's the opposite of kabura maqtan. What does love here mean? Is it an emotional being attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that's it? No, it means now you're going towards the right destination. Now you're actually embodying that which you're preaching. Now you're truly following the hand that was pointing to that camera. Now you're actually following the imamat. You're now embodying that which the Imam was asking you to do. You're now placing the right Khalifa on the throne of your 24 hours. And it's not yourself. It's the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's look at a historic example now. Two young men, two young boys. See how they reach the heights of perfection at the tender age of 10 or so. When you start to embody that which you preach, you don't need a lot of time. When you commit to something in your heart, it doesn't take a lot of time for it to cause an effect if it's genuine in its nature. Let's look at two young men and how they reached the peaks of perfection. At what age? How old were these two when they reached the peak of their perfection? They're around 10 years old. How did they reach that perfection? Because they acted on that which they were preaching, which they were talking about, which they stood for. Aoun and Muhammad, the sons of Sayyidah Zainab, their battle is accounted in our historical texts. by contemporary historians. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Before Ashura itself, on the last night, Owen is talking to Muhammad in this poem. You don't have to tell me to rise. I am standing straight to fight for my Mawla every day and every night. I embody what I say. I love the Quran. Read it every day. Thrilled I was when I got this one day. Abu Abdullah asked the fight to be pushed by one day so that they could recite the Holy Quran and do ibadah. The night passes in the recitation of the Holy Quran and the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when the morning comes, Muhammad is speaking to his brother Awn. Brother, time has come. The sun and the sword both have risen. One to light, the other to fight. I love the Quran. Read it every night. I'm scared I may not do so today. For me in this fight, I'm years away. Muhammad was young compared to the people he was fighting. These young men, these brave grandchildren of Ali ibn Abi Talib, they take to the field and they fight the best they can. They endure the attacks from the enemy. They're standing up for what they believe in. Alas, the enemies are too great. They surround these boys. And in their last moments, they call to their Imam, accept my salam. I did all I could, Ya Hussein. I want nothing from this world but to see your face just this once, Ya Hussein. Covered in my blood, I am scared that my mother may see. So come cover me, Mawla. Please hurry to me. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.